evidence is very critical. It's important. It's essential that we use evidence in smart and intelligent ways. But for all the most important policy questions, you have to have some lens, some conceptual framework in order to take that evidence and translate it into giving good policy advice. The nature of the evidence that we have very seldom tells us what happens if we entertain a new policy. The new policy may push us into a new domain, into a new region where the evidence is sparse. It may take us from a place where there's data richness to places where there's data sparsity. And this is especially true for problems that we face that are dynamic in nature, ones that unfold over many time periods and the like. It takes a conceptual framework to ask what data you should look at, as well as how you look at that data. So it's always the combination of the data and the lens in which you use to interpret that data. Yeah. So I agree that the availability of new data, new data richness, is an exciting phenomenon, and it's important that it's important that as model builders, whereas as economists, we think about the sensible ways to use that data, because that data, in spite of its richness, it has richness along some key dimensions, but not on all dimensions that we need to make sensible policy prescriptions. And moreover, we need the model to tell us exactly what data to look at. How do we measure the social welfare coming off of the new digital economy? What new measurements do we have to include? What new dimensions do we have to add? That all requires conceptual frameworks. And so anytime we frame this as a social policy and a policy that plays out over time, then it's wonderful we have these new data. It's terrific we have computer algorithms that help us look through these large data sets. But you just can't stop there. So the challenge going forward is maybe we need new and different conceptual frameworks in order to use the new data in the most sensible and meaningful ways. So the door gets open for lots of very exciting research that builds models tailored to use this new data in insightful ways. I should correct one thing there. It's not just a model. A big part of our investigation is to use a framework that allows us to look across different models and see what consequences that has. So it's not only just looking at data, it's looking at multiple different models, because there's not one agreed upon model of economic damages. We don't know for sure what all the climate impacts are and the like. So it's more a framework for trying to embrace uncertainty, the uncertainties that are important in that problem, in ways that can improve policymaking. Now, this is a hard problem because of the following. First of all, it involves climate science. So there's a set of modeling perspectives that come out of climate science that are very important to draw upon. They made lots of advances, but part of the nature of this climate change is we're pushing the environment from situations where we have lots of history to ones in which we don't know, and we have to speculate what some of the consequences are going to be to economic activity, to human welfare, in an environment that's potentially quite different than the one we have now. And that's where the modeling comes into play. To do that, you really need to be thinking hard about models. So there's the models coming from the climate side that tell us about the impact of, the humans emit CO2 into the atmosphere that has consequences on the climate, on temperature over many, many decades. So that part comes out of climate science. And then economics comes back into play in terms of the damages. So once we see the climate change, what are the economic consequences? How do people adapt to the new environments? And what are how do we quantify those challenges? So there's modeling that comes in from multiple perspectives that one has to think hard about integrating, and that's not so easy. And then there's the fact that there's limitations to our understanding of the quantitative impact of human activity onto the climate. So climate science has lots of evidence of a human imprint on the climate. The uncertainty comes into play when you turn into a quantitative statement that's as it plays out over different horizons, and that's where So on the one hand, we want to draw on uncertainty characterizations coming out of climate science. We're integrating those in with the type of uncertainties we think about from the economic side. And the interplay between those two types of uncertainties is really important for thinking about things like the so-called social cost of carbon. And so we're really after trying to build a rich framework to kind of doing quantification here to support policy analysis. Doing. Why we want to draw theory is in order to make this statement about we have lots of data here, but now suppose I introduce new policies, maybe they bigger subsidies on say green technologies, or say imposing bigger and larger taxes on the on say carbon consumption. Those type of questions, I just can't look at existing data because the data doesn't have variation along some of these key policy dimensions. And that's where we have to use economic analysis and reasoning to help us make informed statements about how we go, about what the consequences, the economic consequences are of that policy. Yes, the data richness, we definitely want to figure out smart ways to use it, but it just can't stop there.